Hello and welcome to Pluralsight Expert Access. I'm Elsa, and I'll be your host for this episode. I work here at Pluralsight as the accessibility specialist, which means I'm in charge of everything accessibility related. I'm also deafblind and I've been a disability rights activist for about 15 years. If you're new to the series, this is where we gain access to some of the best minds in tech to hear how leaders are solving business challenges. I'm really excited to chat with Dona Sarkar today. Dona is a director of technology for Microsoft Accessibility, where she leads accessibility tech and inclusive design investments. She's a software engineer, a published author, a speaker, and an owner of a fashion business. She's also led an advocacy team for a low-code, no-code development platform at Microsoft. Welcome, Dona.
Thank you so much, Elsa. It is such a pleasure to be here with you.
Absolutely. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, you're currently working as the director of technology for accessibility at Microsoft. Can you talk to me a little about your journey to becoming an accessibility advocate?
Definitely. I feel there are two journeys into this accessibility, disability advocacy. One of them is, hey, I'm born with a disability. It's something that is part of my life, and I would like to work in this space. And I did not have this journey. Mine was very much, I have been dyslexic my whole life. I did not know that until my 30s, which turns out is very common to diagnose neurodiversity in 30s, 40s, 50s, etc. So I was diagnosed early 30s, and suddenly this light went on where I realized, oh, this explains why I'm not so good at reading these slides that I'm supposed to be presenting from. And I started coming up with funny little hacky tech solutions to solve my own problem. I was doing a ton of presentations at various conferences and interviews. So there's a lot of read from this teleprompter, or here's a set of slides. And I used to come up with funny hacks like pre-recording it and piping it into my ear. So I would act like I was reading it, but actually I was just saying words that were being piped into my ear. And after a few years, I started to be a little more open about it. I said, hey, I have dyslexia, and here are the hacks I use. And the chief accessibility officer of Microsoft, Jenny Leigh-Fleury, reached out to me and said, your hacks are really interesting, and we would love to do a piece on you to just share your journey and your story, because we feel there's a lot of other people who could benefit. So we did that piece, and then an opportunity came up on her team to head up the tech investments. And I thought, oh, I have 16 years of developer experience. I've always led engineering teams. It would be fascinating to take that experience and combine it with this space of accessibility and see what happens. So I've been in role about 2 years, and it is easily the most innovative space I've ever worked in. And I've made holograms for a living. So truly, just a mind-bending space in terms of the technology opportunity.
It definitely is. Like, accessibility is kind of where we end up getting to be really creative because, like you're saying, we're hacking our own environments all the time. I've been deafblind my whole life, so I've been basically adapting and hacking the world I live in since I was 6. So you're right, there's two different ways to kind of come to this. But it sort of brings us to my next question, which is that you don't always know who has a disability, especially in remote work environments, because nobody knew that you were dyslexic until you started to tell people. So can you share a little bit about how you think we can all do better at creating inclusion for disability in remote first work environments?
Elsa, I love this question so much because I feel like we all had to figure this out during the pandemic period. And I don't want us to forget those lessons that we learned just because we are hybrid / in person / whatever it is. Because I do love that so many people with disabilities did start having these incredible professional jobs during the pandemic period. So there are 3 things that I learned from 2020 to 2022 that I still do to this day. And I really do want other organizations to start thinking about these 3 practices. The first one is make things available to everyone, not just those who ask. So for example, there's some virtual video conference software where you as an attendee have to ask for, say, captions to be turned on. And you have to ask in front of everybody. And they're now on for everybody or they're off for everybody. I don't like that. I think that's just kind of tacky, and it puts a spotlight on somebody to ask for something that honestly everyone can benefit from. So as an organizer and as organizers, I recommend everybody just turn captions on by default. and choose a software where people can turn it on, turn it off, because some folks with ADHD find it very distracting, but other folks with ADHD find it very helpful. So again, it's a personal choice. But for me, I turn on captions by default. And if people want them off, they have the opportunity to turn them off, because we use Teams where it's up to the individual person.
That's absolutely true, because nobody wants to be the person raising their hand and saying, hey, it's me, I'm the problem.
Right. I was that in a meeting. I was in a board meeting just last week, and they were using something else. And I said, hey, can we turn on captions? And they said, we can, but we're going to have to restart the meeting and they'll be on for everyone. And I felt like a horrible burden, honestly. And I said, this is just how I absorb information. I know I'm dyslexic. It sounds very funny, but it's just kind of helpful to reaffirm what's being said. So I just felt very meh, right? It's not terrible. It's just meh. So that's the first one, is just turn on captions by default. It helps so many people, especially folks who might be speaking a different native language. So that's the first thing. Second one is, if I'm presenting content at all, I send out the slides or a link to the content earlier, because that way folks who might be introverts, might have a learning disability, might be blind, can consume that content earlier and know what's going to be presented in case it's not presented in an accessible way. And a lot of friends who come from other countries say this is really helpful, because then I'm not trying to keep up with English and the content at the exact same time. So that's the second thing. And the third thing is trying to record as many things as I can and sending out the recording and the transcript afterward, because then folks who might be deaf can catch up on anything they might have missed that might have not gotten caught with the sign interpreter or captions. And folks who may have ADHD or, may have tuned out for a few minutes during the event, or may need to hear something twice or consume something twice, have that opportunity. So it's just sort of basic inclusive design principles applied to events and meetings, because we're saying this might be really great for people with disabilities, but probably is beneficial to everyone attending.
Yeah, and as a low vision blind person, I can't do screen share because it doesn't actually blow things up. So I can't see what people are screen sharing. So when people have shared something with me previously, I can follow along, actually reading things with the sort of size that I need. And that way I'm not asking people to send it in the middle of the meeting. Right.
And I think so much of it is just setting expectations and preparing people. So I tend to, if I'm having, I just had a workshop recently, and I just set the expectations. I said, the captions will be on. There will be an accessible slide deck that I will send out after. It will be shared with a link during the meeting. And I'm going to send out a recording and transcript after. And a lot of people reached out and said, thank you for just saying that, because I felt silly asking for it before or after, or, making an assumption. And I think it's just those basic things an event organizer can do to make more people feel included in the process.
And especially in remote work, for me, this is my first day job. I'm one of the disabled people that got a job because we were all remote first. And so now I'm learning how to navigate that. And I don't always want to be the loud squeaky wheel. I want to just be the person who's working here.
Right. You don't want to call that out. You don't want to say, hi, I have a disability. Can you accommodate me for every single meeting? You just want those accommodations to be assumed, right?
Especially because I work in accessibility, where we should be putting disability first work just as our standards. Accessibility people should be doing things in an accessible way.
Absolutely.
So, and we're sort of talking about it already a little bit, like you gave a TED talk on imposter syndrome. And I'd love to know if you see a connection between ableism and imposter syndrome for disabled people.
Oh my gosh, do I? And I realized so much of my impostering. My entire talk was about how I impostered about speaking in public. And the reason I impostered about speaking in public, because I can't read slides. So I felt this overwhelming need to memorize everything and not mess up anything. And I realized, wow, talk about my own internal ableism, that I had to come to terms with the fact that I assumed I had to present like a non-dyslexic person to be heard. And I had to confront that internal ableism first. And then I had to confront the fact that it is absolutely okay to not know how to do something the first time. So much of imposter syndrome, I believe, is people feel like an imposter. Oh, I'm so not qualified to be here, do this thing, lead this project, be in this role, because they have never done it before. And many people with disabilities maybe often don't take up those opportunities because they say, I don't know if the conditions will be accessible for me, and I don't want to, look stupid, fail, disappoint people, etc. So much of impostering comes from, I've never done this before. And then I feel the other part of impostering comes from not wanting to, again, do this thing that you and I are talking about, raising your hand and saying, I actually need a little bit of help. I need some accommodations. I need a bit of a success factor to make this work really well for me. And I had to get over all three of these things. Internal ableism. Second, realizing, I've never spoken on a stage in front of 200 people. Of course, I'm nervous about it and I feel like throwing up in the bushes. And the third one is there's nothing wrong with me saying, you know what? I can't read from these slides or this teleprompter. So can you please give me the script earlier and I can make it work for me. So those were the three.
There's also the external ableism, like what you put on people, because I have experienced people thinking I can't do something.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And that then feeds the internalized ableism, a nice little Scooby snack. Right. And so you're then sort of dealing with the external assumption about what you can do and the internal sort of thing that you've always had of like, I don't know if I can do that. And people are actually telling you can't do it. And so those assumptions actually don't help us get over imposter syndrome.
You know what I've learned recently that was very fascinating was that there are many, say, leaders, and they'll make an assumption over what people can or cannot do. Just an example, because it's very much in my world, are some business leaders will say, X person will not want to go to attend a conference, because they are in a wheelchair or they are blind or they're a new parent. So they'll just make an assumption on behalf of that person. And I've started to tell leaders, give the same opportunity to everybody at your organization who is qualified, and let them decide to opt in or opt out. And I feel that is just a basic thing that leaders can do. And again, it's back to the inclusive design principle. Give everyone the same opportunity and figure out who takes you up on it or not. One of the things that I'm starting to encourage managers to do is just practice that inclusive design principle of offer everybody in your organization the same thing and see who takes you up on it. Whether it is turning on captions or attending an event, don't bias based on some internal notion that people with disabilities don't want to, 1, attend an event, 2, represent your company at an event, or 3, they may not be able to get there on their own, etc. Let them figure it out. Don't infantilize people with disabilities with your own ableist thoughts.
Infantilization is the worst.
It's the worst.
So I want to shift gears a little bit, because it's not just about disability advocacy in terms of the social, but it's also in terms of the technological.
Right.
So what can companies do to build accessibility into their technology org processes so that it isn't the last thing to come up during the process of making a new product? Because we both know that's usually when the engineers come running into the room and say, help, I forgot to do accessibility. What do I do now?
Right. Fix it. Right. This is so funny because shifting left is something that I have been talking about, I swear to God, 21 years, right? Around various topics. It used to be security. Then it was customer data collection. Then it was privacy. And now it's accessibility. So I feel like I have pulled out the exact same playbook I used in 2005 to talk about security. Now, I said, let's take it from the top yet again. It isn't everybody's job. For example, when you're doing user research to build a new product, I don't care if that new product is a gas station or an AI super drone. Make sure you talk to people with disabilities at the beginning to make sure that you understand what some basic requirements are. So it starts at user research to include people with disabilities as part of the research pool of people you talk to, usability studies, et cetera, et cetera. Second part is as you're designing, designers figure out, okay, how would a screen reader user, someone with limited mobility, a colorblind person, dyslexic person, use this? And don't make stuff up. Again, co-create with the people who you already know from doing the research, hopefully last time and this time. Have a set of trusted advisors that you lean into across the disability spectrum. So designers have a role to play. Then product managers and developers, as you're actually creating the product, really add in accessibility to the product developer process. So for example, as you're doing a design review of your code, make sure someone's raising their hand and being like, and what about accessibility, right? Where are you adding like the labels, the names, the, ARIA factors, whatever it is, the alt text on images. And developers and developer managers and leaders put it as part of your pull request and CI/CD process, where you can just create some sort of an automated check that says, okay, did you test for accessibility? Let's do that now and find all your issues right now before you even check in. So put it as part of the developer process rather than trying to add it as some special thing. Do it exactly where you do privacy. So I tell everybody, where do you think about security? Oh, at the beginning. Okay, think about accessibility then. You're doing a review with a security expert before you go checking in code. You don't do security at the end. So do the same thing where you've got your security expert, your privacy expert, probably your localization expert, jam accessibility in as part of that process. And then at the very end, when you go to test and preview, make sure people with disabilities, the same ones, are part of your preview rather than waiting till you've shipped and then saying, oh, I guess we didn't factor this in. So I tell people, look, you feel like it's a huge added tax, but you already have the processes in place if you've ever developed a product before. So put accessibility as part of the process all the way through. And everyone's got some sort of an exit criteria sign off. That just fact. Make sure accessibility is on that list because it should be, but that should not be the first time anyone's ever heard of accessibility during the exit criteria. It should be exactly where you've put all of the other, practical tenets toward product development. And that, again, is very hard to do one day. So shift left one step. So if you're only doing it at exit criteria, think about it at development. If you're already doing it at development, think about it at design. If you're already doing it at design, think about it at research. So shift left every quarter, let's say, one step. And soon you'll be doing it, be accessible by design. And it won't be this huge undertaking, but it's something gradually that you've done for your organization.
It's also that you can't talk to only one type of disabled person.
Yeah.
Because what I've seen a lot of people do is they talk to a fully blind person,
Right.
and then they don't think about the other experiences that exist within that category.
Right.
And so this sort of brings me to the next question, which is that you talk a lot about experimentation. So how does experimentation around the sort of spectrum of disability make us more efficient?
I love experimentation. I truly believe that people are probably one experiment away from understanding how powerful they truly are. And that goes for businesses as well. Experimentation, I feel, is the secret sauce that people just don't use enough. And people make big commitments and say, we are going to do this all the time, 100% of the time. I said, instead of that, how about you run an experiment to see if that thing even worked in this specific scenario before you go and create some metrics and OKRs and, big business commitments around it. So around disability, we run a lot of experiments. I have an experiment framework that I call 100 bad ideas, where I ask people to come to the table with 100 bad ideas to solve a very specific problem. Like a real one we're solving right now is, how do you build guidelines and, let's say, practical things in technology to cater toward neurodivergent people? And again, that is a big spectrum, because ADHD person, very different than dyslexic person, different than autistic person. These are not the same disability. These are not the same accommodations. This is not the same code changes you're going to make. Just the same as the spectrum of blindness, from fully blind to low vision to I need glasses, right? These are very big spectrum. Also thinking about color blindness and all of the different varieties of color blindness. We can't just say, oh yeah, I checked for blindness. I said, what does that look like to you? What does that look like? And neurodiversity, same thing, where we say, okay, cool, reduce distractions. That really helps our ADHD friends, sometimes our autistic friends. That has really not much to do with dyslexic folk. So do you have some sort of an immersive read aloud method for dyslexic folk? And it, again, goes all the way back to inclusive design. So adding in various experimental factors, but testing in production is so important, because many people think, oh, well, I put this in. And I said, great. Did you get feedback from anybody? after you put that in to see if it's actually solving the problem you're trying to solve, or you've just checked the box on it and said, I'm sure this will work. So we run a lot of experiments, especially around these guidelines, and we say, let's have 50 products try the guidelines in a variety of ways across this whole spectrum of people with disabilities and see whether we are first and most important principle, do no harm. So we should not actively be marginalizing another disabled group because we're catering toward one group. That's not good. So if we're creating a really good experience for dyslexic people, let's make sure that's not a horrible experience for blind people. Like showing up some sort of an immersive reader that's not accessible. No one knows what it is. No one knows how to close it. That's bad experience. But likewise, let's make sure we're able to fulfill the needs of as many groups as possible by giving people more options. So how can you consume this product or build this product or use this product in a way that works for you specifically? I do not care what label you carry with you, but you have all of these options available to you to build an environment that works very well for you. So through experimentation, I believe, is how people can build this, rather than there being like some very, you know how it is. People are like, I want a for sure checklist. I said, that does not exist. And you're going to have to build your own for each individual project.
So I want us to sort of talk about that, like there is no checklist and there is a wrong way to do things. And so we're currently in a moment in tech where there is this new AI thing that can do a lot. It doesn't always do it well, but it can do a lot. And so how is AI going to affect disabled people? Because for me, I remember a couple weeks ago when there was an article about how ChatGPT actually faked being blind to get around the CAPTCHA test. So how are we going to navigate this for disabled customers and for accessibility when we know that there's an ethical and to some extent just sort of lack of knowledge coming from AI when it comes to accessibility?
I am so happy we're talking about this, Elsa, because I truly believe that AI will be one of these amazing tools for people with disabilities to equal the playing field across life and work. I do truly, truly believe that when used correctly. So there are three things that I am looking at right now. First is just the accessibility of AI products, just basic accessibility, where can a screen reader user actually type words into this box and read what is being said? Yes or no? So that's just basic, HTML, JavaScript, Python, whatever you want to call it, accessibility of the product. And that is table stakes. AI products should be accessible. Fact. Second one is it actually usable for people with disabilities? For example, the paradigms of generative AI is really different than a lot of the other things that we've used. So does a screen reader user really understand, like, where are the words being generated? And how accurate are these words? Are those sources, is it clear that these are sources that it's referring to? So the usability of these products and the usefulness of these products. Is this telling you information that is actually going to help you, right? And then the third thing, and this is really important, is bias in data sets. Because AI is biased. We know that. It's biased toward lots of people with disabilities, people who have lower bandwidth, people in emerging markets, people who are older, people who are younger, people from different country, language, culture. It is biased, very much skewed toward a certain demographic who built most of it, which is unsurprising. But that's just bias in the world that we live in. I truly believe that we need to have more disability representation to work in AI products, whether it's training models, whether it's working with the moderation endpoints, whether it's weighing certain data sets higher to represent people with disability better. So for example, recently, one of the AI products, I just asked a question. I said, someone is blind on my team. What is a really good gift I can get for them? And the answer came back, oh, I'm so sorry that they're blind. Here are some gift ideas. And I said, look, why are you sorry they're blind? It's just a fact. It's like saying, sorry, you're brunette, Dona. Right? It's not good, not bad, just a fact. No need for 2 cents. Thank you. So much of it is just that internalized bias in the data set. And I think, Elsa, and you'll feel this in your toes probably, we people with disabilities have to be involved in the creating of AI tools.
Yeah.
Absolutely have to be involved in the creating, not consuming only, but in the creating process.
When I teach, so I used to be a humanities professor at an engineering school, and I taught humanities and ethics, first year writing. And I would always teach the morality machine problem.
Okay.
Because MIT produced the morality machine back in, I think it was 2016 or 2017, to show how we could use intelligent learning models to predict how autonomous cars would handle the trolley problem. There's this one really big problem with their models, though, and it's that they didn't put disabled bodies into the model. So if you asked it whether the autonomous car would pick hitting an ambulatory person versus a wheelchair user, it didn't even have wheelchair users in the system. It would pull up a stroller with a baby in it. And so I then looked at my students and I would say, okay, so what's the problem here? And they would all kind of stare at each other. And I went, the problem is that there were no disabled people involved in this conversation. Because disabled people will be using autonomous cars as consumers. Disabled people will also exist in the world where the autonomous cars are driving. And the fact that we just were sort of edited out of that whole conversation means that there were no disabled people in the room. So we need to be in the room. Disabled people have to be in the room.
And in all the ways, right? Where some of it is actually being the ethics expert. The other is being the software engineers and the data scientists. I believe in all of these jobs because what I don't want are people with disabilities to be the consultants, right? Who come in and give the speech on responsible AI and here's how to think about disability. But they're not involved in the building, the training of the model or teaching people how to use these models to do these very interesting jobs and have these very interesting scenarios. And the other thing I will tell you is when I think about responsible AI practices, basic things like state that this is AI, state that this is not a human, this is AI generated responses or AI generated activity. That's one. Second is make sure your AI product is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing and nothing else. Like, for example, I don't need my finance bot to be giving advice on real estate. I don't need my accessibility bot to be pontificating about poetry. Like, just state exactly what it's supposed to do and do that thing. And third, cite sources, like real sources where it's pulling from. I think these are three practices that every AI product on the planet needs to really be thinking about. And I really want sources that refer to people with disabilities to be a factor, an important factor. So for example, what is the best way to book a flight from Seattle to Sydney? I want there to be a segment on, and if you are a wheelchair user, here are some flights that are better. Or if you need accessibility help at all, here's a number to call. I want that to be default rather than always having to ask for it.
And honestly, it could even pull information from disabled people because it can scroll through everything. If it can see that there are a lot of disabled people who have posted rants on Twitter about getting trapped in the disability support services area at Schiphol when they're flying through Amsterdam, which happened to me multiple times, then you can say, maybe don't fly through Schiphol on your way to Stockholm.
Right.
So it could be a really great tool, but it's not looking for those answers. And you're right. Like we should be seeing more disabled people in products. That's actually a space I'm talking about a lot right now because I think product management is ripe for having accessibility conversations.
Yes, and I want people with disabilities to work in product, but not accessibility. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like core product management. What I love is when I meet, a blind person or someone in a wheelchair or a dyslexic person, and they're like, I write the kernel of Windows. I'm like, yes, thank you. Because by default, this product will be more accessible, but I don't want them always to be an accessibility program manager. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's honestly, it's kind of like ghettoizing us.
Yeah.
It's sticking us into the accessibility box and then never letting us out to do anything
That's
else.
exactly it. Yeah. And plus, there's not that many accessibility jobs. It's not like there's 1 billion accessibility jobs. No, but there are 1 billion product jobs. So I want people with disabilities to be in every room where things are created for the world around them, because that's how we're going to get better products just for everyone.
It's so true. So the last thing I want us to talk about is the fun thing,
Oh,
which is, what is the worst possible application we could use for ChatGPT?
it's probably attempting to replace people with disabilities with ChatGPT.
Yes.
That's probably it, where we're like, well, we don't actually need to do user research or, do any of this. We're just going to have GPT do it. I said, oh no. Oh, no, no, no. Please,
No.
please, bless your stone cold heart, but no, right? I know. Please don't. That's up there.
I'm a sci-fi writer,
Yeah.
and so in my world, I do a lot of work where I teach sci-fi writers how not to erase disabled people, and it's like I just want to grab the faces of the people doing ChatGPT and point them at every single thing I've ever taught sci-fi writers and say, see, you don't want to be Robert Heinlein. You don't want to write us out of the future. Please stop.
Please stop. Please stop. And
Look at Star Trek.
you're right.
It's fine. There's wheelchair users in the background
Yes.
now.
Yes. And I truly believe it's where we need more representation. And one of the things, Elsa, that is so interesting to me, and I wish people would start talking about this more. So I'm talking about it, and I'm sure you are. We're all going to be disabled. All. Everyone who's lucky enough to live past, I don't know, 40, you're going to develop a thing. Like the number of people who got carpal tunnel during the pandemic because of horrible postures and chairs and all this was a lot. And I said, did you not figure out that that is a disability? Or like all of y'all who are into skiing, you're going to break something at some point.
It's me.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm one who skis with one eye and hearing aids.
Wow.
And I take the hearing aids out. So I don't want them to break. If they fall out of my ears when I fall, then the hearing aids break, and then I'm really screwed.
Also, I can't even. Like, skiing is the most terrifying activity. But I see adaptive skiers all the time, and I'm like, I'm scared of all skiing. Normal skiing, adaptive skiing, nope. But it really is a thing. It will affect everyone. It's one of those factors, human factors, where actually it will affect everyone. It might be the only one that will affect everybody. We're not going to experience other races, or sometimes we might experience other genders or whatever it is, but we're all going to experience disability, either first person or through someone we love. So while we're in positions of power and authority, we should build a world we would like to live in during that period. So that's why I'm such a control freak about this. I'm like, oh, good. I have lots of say right now. Let me go build the world I'm going to need in a few years, like just from the house I live in to the technology I use.
And it's funny because when I give the talks I usually give, I actually will say, raise your hand if you're wearing contacts right now. And, half of the room raises their hand. And I'm like, okay, raise your hand if you're wearing glasses. And then there's like another quarter of the room raises their hand.
Yeah.
Like, hi, you're disabled.
Right. That's exactly it. I ask everybody, look around and I say, oh, there's more than 12 dudes in here. That means one of y'all colorblind. And half the room's like, wait, I'm colorblind. So, right. So guess what? Accessibility is your friend. They were like, I didn't think of that. And all of you who think you don't have hearing loss, but you listen to music loudly in your youth, you have hearing loss.
Did you go to loud clubs?
Yes.
Did you happen to go to any metal shows ever?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
You have hearing loss. Exactly. This is so fun, Elsa. This is so fun.
I know. Thank you so much, Dona, for sharing your expertise today. If you want to check out the show notes to see the resources we've mentioned, we will have lots. We hope you'll follow, subscribe, or review this series, and send us any feedback you have on how we can improve the format for future episodes. Thank you again so much, Dona, for coming and talking with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you.